Hi, this is the episode number 1 of Founder Meditation Podcast. My name is Weiting, and I'm the host of this podcast. It's going to be a very interesting experiment for myself because I've always wanted to record a podcast. And thanks to all the encouragements by the loved ones around myself, I have decided to start doing this. And let's see how it goes. So the main purpose of the podcast is to interview other startup founders and perhaps other people in tech about their spiritual and meditation practice. And I think there's an interesting intersection between founders, being a founder, entrepreneurship, and spirituality. And I think because founders in general live a highly stressful life, and also the purpose of this is to try to minimize the pain and sufferings that my fellow founders have gone through. And also, if you see the roles of the founders as one of the highest impacting roles of humankind in life, then if we can really help the founders become more productive, successful, with higher level of well-being, I think that's like a very high leverage thing for us to do. So let's give this a try and see how it goes. So as the first episode, I like to share with the world about my spiritual journey. Also, the idea is to record once. So anytime other founders' friend ask me about this in the future, I'm just going to point them to this YouTube. So I'm 43 years old right now. I've actually started my meditation practice not too long ago, roughly about 3 years ago. And I've actually downloaded Headspace many years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But at that time, it wasn't really a high life priority for me. So it just didn't go anywhere. My year-long subscription expires and I just forgot about meditation for some years. What happened was that about 3 years ago, I started doing this as a way of mental fitness. As you know, smart founders in tech, guys like Tim Ferriss kept talking about how wonderful meditation is, how helpful this has helped with their productivity. And also even billionaires like Ray Dalio kept telling people how much impact meditation has had for them in their lives. Ray Dalio even said that if he can attribute to any of his success to one thing, and that's meditation, and meditation is the best gift he can give to anyone. So I followed his advice. I followed Ray Dalio's advice and started meditating. And my goal at that time is I really want to create a habit of doing something every single day. So I've downloaded an app called Oak, which is actually an app by Kevin Rose, actually, I believe. And the reason I downloaded it was that Ray Dalio was doing transcendental meditation. I wanted to try to learn something similar very quickly by my own. And at that time, the app Oak had this mini course called Mantra Meditation, which is, I guess, very similar to transcendental meditation. So I tried that. I went through the entire, I guess, beginner's course. I can remember maybe 10-day, 20-day meditation course. And I absolutely loved it. And I started to notice a lift in terms of my daily level of happiness. And I remember probably after a short period of time, maybe a few weeks, 2 months maximum, I started to notice this shift. And remember, started to very organically go around and share with my entrepreneurial friends, my other startup founders, saying that meditation is amazing. Why? Because you actually increase the level of happiness, your highs becomes higher, and even your lows become not as low as well. You'll be able to notice your emotion. It's almost like you can, whenever Weiting becomes angry or mad or sad, you can very quickly observe these emotions arise, and you can even choose whether you want to continue to be angry or not. And to me, that's a superpower because, when you become angry, your IQ actually goes down. So if you want to increase your average level of intelligence, just try to be angry less, or just try not to do dumb things while you are being overtaken by your negative emotion. And for some time, I was really able to do that. And that felt amazing. And I started to organically share how wonderful meditation is with my colleagues, with my family, with my other startup friends. I started to gift meditation left and right. Yes, I've gone through those stages. And so that was like 3 years ago. And basically what happened about 1 year later, basically roughly about 2 years ago, I started to experience this intense suffering. In a way, it's coming out of nowhere, but it's probably also impacted by some personal life events as well. And, I guess the saying's true where 90% of people who will go through the door of spirituality go through the doors of suffering. So I was a classic example. It felt like all of a sudden, I feel like all of my life's work is for nothing. And I guess I couldn't, on the surface, even myself could say that I feel fine, but deep down, maybe I was not. And around that time, a very great friend of mine, Howard, thank you very much, he actually, out of nowhere, he actually recommended me to read this book called Awareness by Anthony Mello. So Anthony Mello is actually a Spanish priest who's also Indian. So he's no longer alive, but I guess he was one of the more popular spiritual teacher, maybe in the 70s or the 80s. So, and this book called Awareness is basically a compilation transcript of his speeches, talks that he gave. So it was actually not a long book, so I quickly bought a Kindle version. And what was interesting was that I was having a very hard time going through the first 10 or 20 pages. I actually stopped reading. So I stopped reading the book for a few weeks, and I actually confessed to my friend that, hey man, this is actually quite difficult. It's a very boring book. I'm not able to finish it. And for the reason, my friend actually encouraged me to keep on going and say that, yeah, the first few pages can really be hard to go through. But then once you pass the initial first few pages, it's going to become interesting. So what I did was I actually followed my friend's advice, and I followed through and discovered, wow, this is actually a very fascinating book covering a lot of interesting ideas that I previously have never had a chance to encounter, right? So in some way, my friend is a bodhisattva of mine. Thank you very much. I'm eternal grateful of every beings who have been very helpful to me on my journey. And the book actually mentioned several key concepts. I still remember this quote. That's very fascinating. Anthony Mello wrote that if you are suffering, you are asleep. So that's a very profound message to me at that time. And that was actually also the first time that I was really introduced to the concept of waking up, concept of enlightenment, basically. And after that book, I started to be quite curious about what are some of the other interesting books in spirituality that I could read. So my background, so I was born in Taiwan and I grew up in Canada, and there's actually tons of Buddhist temples or religious temples around me all the time, right? But I guess all these religion, it never really resonated with me. It resonated with it somewhat, but not really in a spiritual sense. So I guess being a 21st century intellect who heavily relies on logic and the left side of the brain, I think a more secular or even a more scientific door would resonate with me better. So one reason I naturally pick up this second book, which is Waking Up by Sam Harris, which is I guess subtitle is something like a a a non-religious view into spirituality, right? So I read the book and I was immediately hooked. So in some sense, Sam Harris is also I guess a mentor of mine who has led me down the rabbit hole of spirituality. So in that book, Sam Harris talked about his journey as a young man, graduating from Stanford, and then went on several meditation retreat, went to follow different meditation teachers in India, in Tibet, and Nepal. And that was very fascinating. He was able to use very secular language, very scientific language, and talk about spirituality, about the power and benefit of meditation. And that led me to a rabbit hole, right? So I started to follow the spiritual teachers that he mentioned in his book. And I also downloaded his Waking Up app and started to follow and read books by the spiritual teachers he talked with in his app, folks such as Law Kelly and a few others. I've also, stumbled into The Headless Way by Douglas Harding. I actually read the original book and tried to practice the Headless Way at that time. I absolutely could not get it at that time. So it's all part of a very fascinating journey for me. And by that time, I've been meditating on average 20 minutes a day, and felt very good about myself, right? So I started to share how wonderful meditation is to other friends of mine. And at that time, I remember listening to Sam Harris, and he talked about the magical experience of going on an extended meditation retreat. He was saying that, yes, you can meditate daily. You have a dedicated meditation practice of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, even 2 hours a day. But for whatever reason, there's this magic of going on a retreat that he will highly recommend people to try. So luckily, I was in a good position to be able to disappear from the face of the earth for 10 days. So around November 2022, I went on a 10-day Vipassana retreat in the south of Taiwan, in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. It's actually Goenka Vipassana meditation retreat that I went to. It was interesting because going in, I really had no idea what's going to happen in the Vipassana retreat. In some way, I don't even know what Vipassana is at that time. I just, in a way, I Googled meditation retreat, and the Vipassana version came out to be number one. And I guess also another friend of mine in tech, she wrote about her experience of going on the same retreat for 10 days, and she highly recommended. And there's a few other articles by other people in tech who seem to have a great experience about the retreat. So I went in, and it was a fabulous, life-changing experience for me. So going in, I had absolutely no idea the curriculum of the retreat. I know that it may be tough, and it turns out that we meditated for 10, 11 hours every single day for 10 days. And that's basically an entire year's worth of meditation for me, jam-packed in 10 days. And I had no expectation. Maybe I had some expectations of having some kind of awakening experience during that retreat, but I have no idea about the curriculum. So in the first 3.5 days, all we did was to watch our breath. So I was monitoring our breath for 3.5 days. Basically 30 plus hours meditating on our breath. So I guess by that time I was very, very calm. And then after 3.5 days, the meditation that we did was body scanning. So we started to develop the body scanning for 6+ days. And the last day we did compassion metta meditation. May all beings be happy. May all beings peaceful. May all beings be liberated. So it was a life-changing experience. It was also a very interesting experience because there's zero talking. You're not supposed to read. You're not supposed to, so you have to minimize input consumption of anything, right? So I had a roommate at that time. It was quite funny. It's basically, it felt like two people from outside. It was probably going to be a very interesting sight because it looks as if it's two people mad at each other. Now they're not talking to each other and just not even making eye contact. But what happened was I became very, very calm, maybe without me noticing it. And some thoughts have arisen. I never really had any emotional storm of any kind. Maybe because I already had a regular meditation practice, so maybe for I guess for whatever reason, it wasn't really, I didn't experience much shadow work at that time. But I was deeply, deeply inspired that time. Toward the second half of the retreat, I had one meaningful insight every single day. Right. I guess I was listening to the stories of the Buddha, very, very inspiring. And at that time, I wanted to become like a mini baby Buddha. I want to help the world, be compassionate, be kind, and just do wonderful things to other human beings, right? And by the end of the retreat, I thought that, wow, I'm so calm. I'm not going to be mad again ever, which I guess is not true, right? After a few days of coming out, I started to become, as life takes over, I started to have very strong emotions as well. But those are very interesting part of the journey. And I actually got a lot of interesting insight. And on the last day of the retreat, I also had, I guess, my first mystical experience. The best way that I would describe it was that it felt like I was actually sitting outside watching this beautiful scenery. At that time, I was actually reciting Bahima's sutra. In the scene, there's only the scene, the herd, just the herd, the sense, only a sense, the cognized, only the cognized. And for a reason, all of a sudden, I had this shift in my consciousness, as in, it felt like, okay, now imagine in the movie Avatar, right? If you're a character there and you actually, I guess, transport yourself into an avatar body, another planet. It felt like that. It felt like my real identity is not this Weiting Liu. I'm consciousness in another dimensionless realm, remote controlling this body. It was very vivid. So it feels like I 100% felt that I'm not this body. This body does not belong to me. I'm just remote controlling this body from another dimensionless space. And this world actually does not exist. I'm in this virtual game. It feels like I'm in this VR where the 3D world did not exist. And I guess the visual field just being stitched frame by frame automatically. And I feel like I'm walking in this world because of this illusion created by my 5 senses. At this feeling, I was in this mode maybe for about maybe an hour or two, and I organically got shifted away when my roommate at that time started talking to me. That was the last day of the retreat. But regardless of what, that was a very real taste of what different type of consciousness one can experience. And after coming out of the retreat, I decided I want to do at least one meditation retreat once per quarter. And I started doing that. So in Q1, Q2, Q3, I've done meditation retreat every single quarter and felt good about myself. And what was interesting was around that time, maybe around Q1, end of March-ish, another entrepreneur friend of mine who was also on this path, he's a lot further than mine, so I consider him as a friend and a mentor, a legitimate mentor of mine. He started to share a few other Western spiritual teacher with me. One of them was Michael Taft. Another one was Angelo Dillulo. And because he actually know Frank Yan, who's a well-known YouTuber, meditation celebrity, as Michael Taft calls him. So my friend is also quite further along the path. And he constantly shared with me the learnings that he's had from Frank and other meditation teachers. And he shared Michael Taft's, basically he just shared with me that maybe it's a good idea for me to follow Michael Taft's guided meditation on YouTube. And around March, April at that time, he shared with me Angelo Dillulo, and he recommended me to read his book, Awake, It's Your Turn. And I read the book, and that caused a massive, very noticeable shift in me, both his videos and his book. So whenever I meet other friends on this path, because I'm still very junior, I consider myself as a very determined junior developer who wants to continuously work on his craft, who really wants to work hard, who wants to improve very quickly. So I'm by no means in any position to teach anyone whatsoever. But usually what I do is these are some of the books that I really enjoy, and these are the teachers that have really me, and those, it might be interesting for you to check this out. So the two meditation teachers are Angelo Dillulo, Michael Taft. And Angelo's book has caused a massive shift in me. Basically, the idea is that you can investigate with direct experience that your true identity is not discrete human walking in this concrete world time called Earth in 2023. Perhaps there's something bigger, right? Perhaps there's an experience where you'll realize that everything is just thoughts and you are not your body. You are everything within consciousness. I'm probably not in a good position to share any meaningful spiritual teaching right now, but that book has caused a massive, massive shift. And I highly recommend you to read that book if you are serious about that. Okay? So I read the book, caused massive shift, and at that time I started to going to Zen retreats at a local Zen, I guess, monastery. Practiced, I guess, koan, basically. The koan that I practice, or what is it? Or version what is, and has some interesting insight. I also attended Angelo Dillulo's online retreat in July. I didn't really experience a strong insight that's different at that time, to be honest. But at that time I started to, how to say this? I started to drop the idea that I have to have a better, stronger, more wise, more profound mystical experience every single retreat for me to call it as a progress. And around, I remember around maybe starting August, as I was starting to do some travel with my family, I started to, by that time, around those time, I have been continuously doing daily Vipassana practice on a daily basis for an hour up until maybe July-ish. Maybe starting from July or August, I started to do the guided 1 hour meditation by Michael Taft on a daily basis. Noticeably, I started to feel a noticeable shift in me. So it's a non-dual awake awareness meditation. And I started to feel vast openness. I remember I was in Bali at that time and I was meditating complete darkness in the morning with my family sleeping. I was have this wonderful open awareness feeling in me at the time, and level of happiness, I guess without me noticing it, become higher and higher. Maybe fundamental well-being start to occur without me realizing those are occurring at that time. And around end of September, I went to San Francisco Bay Area because there's Y Combinator alumni reunion and there's also Techstars alumni reunion in a span of 2 weeks. So I decided to fly back to the Bay Area for the first time since the start of pandemic. So it turned out that trip was also a life-changing experience for me because during that trip, I started to notice that things become very spontaneous. So I have become, before walking down this path, I have been this shy, tense dude who's quite awkward socially. I'm probably still am, right? But for a reason, going to all those alumni reunions, those tech events in the Bay Area, I felt at ease all the time. And I wasn't thinking about what to say. Words just naturally come out of my mouth. I felt very spontaneous. I was even naturally chatting with, I guess, bouncers, like security guards at some restaurant. I felt very amazed by it. I even went a camping trip with 80 plus other YC founders at that time, people whom I don't know about. But for a reason, I felt very natural. I felt very much at ease at those social settings. Felt good about talking to anyone. And I had this natural curiosity of striking conversations with random strangers at that time. Before starting this journey, I was not like that. And that felt great most of the time. And I was also deeply inspired by other founders that I've met on my trip around that time. And everything felt spontaneous. It felt like I was thinking about something and I had some question in mind, and I would just naturally bump into other founders or other observation that was able to answer my question at that time. It felt very strange, it felt very awkward. It felt like things are synchronized. Right. Now looking back, the way I've been trying to describe my experience was that it just felt like the universe was propelling me forward, right? There are things that I've always wanted to do, just happen very naturally. So for example, I've been running this startup of mine, Arc and Commenter, for the last 10 plus years, right? It's a very long time. right? And of course, naturally, entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. Towards maybe the last 2 years or so, I started to become probably a little bit burnt out inside. I was tired of the day-to-day operation. And I've always been in a very lucky situations. I have great partners, executive team members who can just take over things. So I guess even as CEO of the company, I was able to disappear from the surface of the earth for 10 days and go on meditation retreat constantly. So I was already in a very lucky position. But basically, around that time, I've always thought about, okay, what would it be like if I can pass the baton to another more capable person? So I can just have a more capable CEO to run the company, and with me being the major shareholder to cheer them on, right? I can still create projects within the company because I guess naturally I'm just more of a early stage startup founder, right? And running a 6-person company is probably really not aligned with my natural capabilities. So for the longest time, maybe I wanted this to happen, that I was never able to do that. But just all of a sudden, starting around that time, after that trip, everything just started to happen very naturally, just fall in their own place. So in November, we decided to officially ask my COO, Gage, to become the CEO of our existing business. And I'm just going to focus on creating product and new businesses. And all of this just happened very, very naturally, very, very organic. I was in this CEO peer at that time where other founders were very interested, also passing the baton and others replacing them as CEO. I was actually the first one who's successfully complete that mission, to my surprise, honestly. So it felt like I've been at all the time. It felt like I've been autopilot mode, and the universe has just been propelled forward. Incredible, incredible. So where am I going with this? I don't know. So now the default way for me to live the life is to, I got this passage from somewhere that felt it was very profound. And it goes like this: let everything be okay, and everything will be okay. Yes, you can still work hard, but if you just let everything be okay, then everything will, right? If you were to talk to the folks in the manifestation camp, they're probably to tell you something similar with a Sonic language as well. So the way I operate in life now is I'm at ease with everything, and yes, I want to accomplish things, but the way for me to do this is not to work super hard and something like Elon Musk way of work is not something that I no longer subscribe to that life. Yes, you want to have passion, you want to have interest, but you also want to have a very relaxed attitude, believing that things will just turn out the way it's going to turn out, and just accept everything. You can call this surrender. You can call this autopilot. And for me, it's about having a very relaxed attitude, believe, truly accept things will be okay, and just be on autopilot mode. I now make decisions effortlessly. Yes, I still strategize, but whatever decision I make, I just make it once based on my own intuition and 100% believing that's the right and only. that you can make. I truly believe that. I guess another interesting question to talk about is, do you believe in free will? Right? The answer is, my answer to that is no. Human beings do not have free will. That's what I truly believe in, right? And you can actually verify this with direct experience. Any decision that you make, how are you making that? The thoughts just arise themselves. Right? If you can Vipassanizing, you can Vipassana deeply try to observe how your thoughts come about, you can verify that is indeed true. They just come out of nowhere. So those are interesting direct experiences that you can decide for yourself whether that's true. Right? So I actually don't believe in free will. And there's a Stanford professor who has written a book very recently who can prove with science that free will does exist. So I understand it's a very interesting topic, right? So who am I to talk about this? But based on my direct experience, this is what I sense right now. But another more interesting question is, does consciousness, does awareness have free will? That's another interesting question. I guess right now I do not have wisdom to answer that question directly. Other interesting questions and interesting answers that I have heard other people say, such as, well, yes, you may say the universe has free will, but what does that mean? Because it's already the totality of everything. So why? I guess I do not have enough insight to fully understand what that is. But we'll see. So why is spirituality important? Right? In the world of the form, right, I believe startup founders are the ones who can make tremendous impact in this world. And I believe if more startup founders, if more founders can insight to spirituality, that can really help them at all levels. Right? At the first level, it's going to increase your level of happiness. Be very important, right? It's going to help you more productive, right? Startup is a roller coaster ride. Imagine a world where you can start your own start. Imagine a world where the journey does not have to be painful. And there's really a mode of living where you can be 100% happy, joyous, regardless of external circumstances. There really is a way. There really is a mode of living, right? And with this, can make that happen. Most of the sufferings human experience are, to be honest with you, unnecessary, right? So if you believe that's a possibility, I invite you to explore the world of spirituality. There are many ways for you to explore. Pick your own style, pick your own tradition, or pick your own YouTube channel as your spiritual teachers. Pick your own book. Eckhart Tolle, Part of Now. There's so many relatively mainstream teachers nowadays that you can start to learn from. You can Sam Harris, right? And the purpose of this podcast is also one, just for me to share my spiritual journey and perhaps maybe in my own little small way, try to have positive impact to this world as well. So that's it. One cut. Thank you so much. There are probably going to be more things I like to add to this in the future, but we'll see about that. So thank you. This is the end of the first podcast that I'm recording. quite tired actually. But we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Bye.